I've got the bullets. Rebel Without a Cause is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
Tonight, for our 283rd episode, we discuss Rebel Without a Cause from 1955, celebrating its 70th anniversary. Directed by Nicholas Ray, written by Stuart Stern and Irving Shulman, cinematography by Ernest Haller, music by Leonard Rosenman. Starring James Dean as James Jim Stark, Natalie Wood as Judy, Sal Mineo as John Plato Crawford, Jim Backus as Frank Stark, Ann Doran as Carol Stark, Corey Allen as Buzz Gunderson, William Hopper as Judy's father, great creative name there, Rochelle Hudson as Judy's mother, just another great creative name, Edward Platt as Inspector Ray Fremick, Marietta Canty as the Crawford family maid. We couldn't give her a name. She has like at least a half dozen lines in this movie. Virginia Brisick as Grandma Stark, and Dennis Hopper, yes, that Dennis Hopper, as Goon. That's his listed character name. Background for the movie: Rebel Without a Cause was released on October 27th, 1955. On a reported budget of $1.5 million, Rebel Without a Cause would gross roughly $7.2 million. The film was met with mixed reviews at the time, but almost universal acclaim for James Dean as Jim Stark. Rebel was nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Supporting Actor for Sal Mineo, Supporting Actress for Natalie Wood, and Story for Nicholas Ray. And again, this is kind of a weird one that I only found out about this. I think this was like the last year that they did it, but there were actually 3 different categories for screenplay. It was like original screenplay, adapted screenplay, and story. There were all 3 separate, so I'm not sure why they changed that or what happened, but oh well. Rebel Without a Cause is closely tied with the rise in youth culture during the mid-50s, in which teenagers became a distinct social group. The box office successes of Rebel and Blackboard Jungle in 1955 caused a chain reaction in Hollywood where every studio started making films aimed at younger audiences. Rebel has since been recognized by the AFI on the following lists. In 1998, it was on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies at number 59, and in 2005, for 100 Movie Quotes, You're Tearing Me Apart was nominated. In 2008, Empire magazine ranked Rebel 477th on the list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. In 1990, only the second year that the National Film Registry was in effect, it was added by the Library of Congress to the National Film Registry. In other popular culture, Tommy Wiseau borrowed James Dean's line, "You're tearing me apart," from Rebel Without a Cause, and used it in his 2003 cult film The Room, widely considered to be one of the worst films ever made. In the original script for Wiseau's movie, it was written as "You're taking me apart, Lisa," a reference to Dean's line. Rebel Without a Cause currently holds a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, an 89 score on Metacritic, and a 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Of course, we can't do it alone, and unlike last week where I just completely forgot to introduce him and then realized after the fact and couldn't splice things together, we welcome back our returning celebrity guests, co-host of the War Starts at Midnight podcast, making his now 14th appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Peterson W. Hill.
Sad I didn't get the polo in 2025. Is
Well,
polo at 15?
Yes, the polo will be
Okay.
15. You'll have to wait till March in order to get your polo. We haven't decided on what 20 is, but I did realize that by the end of next season, there will be at least one person that will pass the 20 marker. So, gentlemen, obviously Rebel Without a Cause is most notably connected to James Dean, who I think has a very outsized reputation, legacy. I'm not really sure what the right word for it is, for only making 3 major films: Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, and Giant, which I believe, was he only nominated for Giant, or did he actually win a posthumous Oscar?
No, he was nominated for East of Eden and Giant and lost both.
Okay. But either way, I think he came onto the scene very quickly and he left it just as quickly. So why is he so revered?
Well, I think in many ways, Dean spoke to generation, even with just this one big role. Because if you're, I'd say, 20 or like 15, this is a movie that connects with you in 55. I don't know if Giant does. I'm curious if it would. And East of Eden, similarly, that's a kind of an angst teen character as well. He might be more like early 20s than that. It's been a while since I've seen it and read the book. But I think the closest parallel I can find is Heath Ledger. And obviously he had about 10 years close to, really 8 years probably, of being a central marquee figure. But right as he was getting going, he gets Brokeback Mountain and he has a couple more movies and then Dark Knight, and that's it. Imaginative of Dr. Parnassus, but nobody really remembers that movie very, very well. And I think the glory of being young and talented, and then the tragedy of passing away young and not fulfilling the potential is, I think, one thing that leaves a mystique around Dean.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I think he comes from a different school of acting. He was working similarly to Brando in a much more modern style of acting. And I think he just would have gotten more interesting and better. And I think this is an interesting performance because while it's very good in many ways, I think there's some moments that he isn't quite there yet.
So forgive me for saying this, but I think every generation seemingly has their younger generational defining film, if you will. And for this generation, I would say it's this. I don't know what it is for every single one. Maybe like American Graffiti would fit that for a certain generation. I think The Breakfast Club probably fits that for maybe Dad's generation. Or I know that you have your problems with it, Dad, but most other people do not. And I guess if I were to relate it to a younger audience or people around my age, it would be like if Superbad came out and Jonah Hill just suddenly passed away. Like he's not the sex symbol that James Dean is, so I don't want to make that mistake. But Superbad in a lot of ways was like our teen high school interaction movie, the one that we really felt connected with us in a way. And then to have the like leading person that came out of that had name recognition to suddenly pass away and now make him also a sex symbol, I think that might be part of it.
Part of the situation is this, which is everybody who becomes increasingly popular, once they hit their peak, we start to tear them down. We find every flaw, every mistake. Never had a chance with James Dean. He was at the top. He died. And then that was it. We had no chance to pick him apart. And he never had any real failure. So therefore, we didn't have anything to look at that either. So all we have are 3 stellar performances. And
I mean, there have been a number of different actors that have been, let's say, lost or, I don't know, died too soon. And so we have fond memories of them. I guess you could say they died a hero before they became the villain.
River Phoenix.
Yeah, that's a good one.
He's by the Gen X one. But, Tom, I think part of the thing, Superbad is an interesting, I love Superbad. I've seen it 1,000 times. And it might be that I'm like 3 years older than you.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, hold on, how old are you?
I'm 35.
35. Okay, so I'm 4 years older than you. I think for me, 4 years younger, it was Garden State.
Oh,
and
sure.
A movie that is not particularly aged well. And
you mean a Zach Braff production wouldn't age well?
Well, but you go back and you watch that movie, and it's not the pile of dog shit that people say it is. It's
Pile of cat shit.
it's a young person's movie, and he uses a lot of tricks and makes it look nice. But I think the reason that movie is more closely linked to this is it is the malaise of being a certain age and being so rudderless.
Yeah.
And then in the Dean comparison, for Dean, it's all, where do I put my misspent anger? Because if you lived on a farm 40 years before, you just went out and you did your farm work. And now for Dean, it's like, oh, I have to like interact with society, and I have my car. And it's almost this thing where I feel like it's when you're of a certain age, like even when you're like 16 or 17, you really like, you feel independent, but as a parent, you're like, these kids are so stupid. Like you just like, I mean, I look what I did as a 16, 17-year-old or in college, and I'm like,
well, yeah.
What the hell was I thinking? Like why was I allowed to vote? Why was I allowed to like get behind the wheel of a car? Like your brain is just like, it's, yes, you can have very responsible kids. And I was a pretty responsible kid, but at the same time, I was like, I'd go egg cars as they're driving on the side of the, you know, like that kind of dumb stuff. And it's, you look for this where you like want to throw your anger because you're angry for no reason. Like you're just you're all hormones and all impulse. You're like a shark. And I think Garden State is like, what happens when you're past that stage and the world has let you down enough where it's like, all right, now what? Garden State's that kind of generational film for me, at least from 2004. I was a senior in high school when it came out like August of 2004. So I saw it when I was just turned 18. And, you know, I think you kind of, as a teenager, you drift towards a different like thing that defines you as a personality. It's like, oh, like, you know, are you the jock? Are you the arty kid? Are you kind of, you know, like emotionally you latch on where it's like, you know, what I project to the world in some sense.
Again, I think most of the movies that I've mentioned are those kind of teenage angst, although some of them are like young adult, because for the most part, like American Graffiti is about the kids like right after they leave high school kind of thing. So it's not per se teenage, but you kind of understand what I mean. They're all about, what am I doing with my life? What's my identity? How do I format who I'm going to be before whatever this next stage is? And I think this is kind of one of the rare movies in this time set, because this was not a very typical or usual movie. I think this is kind of an archetype, but it's aided by the fact that Dean dies before the movie actually comes out. So that goes to your example of Heath Ledger. There was like so much hype around him playing the Joker because people thought he basically either drove himself to suicide or that he had somehow gone to his death because he played this dark character and he got so into it that he somehow killed himself. Likewise, I think it also helps that he's this icon or this symbol because he never ages. He exists in this 1-2 year period where he's always going to be this young, youthful sex symbol, and he will never get any older at all.
Yeah. I mean, he is a beautiful man. Like, he is so handsome in this movie. And I think part of the thing with Dean that makes a lot of sense in casting him, because he is like 24 when this movie comes out. He is certainly too old. But Sal Mineo is only like 15. And having that age gap between them, I think, is very important. Like, Sal Mineo, he's like 15 and he looks like he's 13. And James Dean's 24 and he looks like he's 24. He does not look like a high schooler. So when Sal Mineo at the end is kind of looking at him as more of a father figure, and then Natalie Wood as a parent or like a mother figure, it makes a lot of sense because Dean just projects like confidence, even in the sense that he has none. And he has no idea what he's doing, but he projects it. And the Plato character like latches onto that. And I think that's part of the reason this is aged really well too is that it's teenagers looking for a sense of companionship, a sense of belonging, and they find it in the wrong places, in the misspent places, and they latch onto like, oh, this guy looks older, he looks bigger, he's my father figure, and like that's what Plato latches onto. And then the Dean character has no one to do that, and that's why he goes to the cop. The cop is the one who, I think, and this is a really interesting depiction of police, because that detective, what, Fremick, is it?
Yeah.
Ray Fremick, I want to say.
Yeah.
The depiction of him is like he knows, because they're in the juvenile division, he knows how troubled he is. And he knows that, like, hey, just come sit down and talk to me. Before you do anything dumb, just come talk to me. That's why when he goes to try to talk to him and he's not there, then all hell breaks loose.
I was expecting him at any moment to say they should go in the cone of silence.
I'm sure all of our 70-year-old listeners will get that reference. Okay. Anyway, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
I had not seen it for a very, very long time. And I don't know if you and I watched it at some point or if I just put it on with your mother. But I don't think I've seen it. I think the first time I saw it was about 5 years ago.
So I remember putting it on. I don't remember what the occasion was. We were at the Lau's residence, and Steve Lau was sitting there and wanted to put on a movie. So I don't know. I pulled up HBO Max at the time and threw this on because he'd never seen it. I think that was only like 2 years ago, but we never got more than like a half an hour into the film before we all left or whatever. But regardless, I don't remember the first time I saw this. I want to say it was probably in the last 10 years that I officially watched it. I knew it from some references to things. But the other thing that really stood out to me here, it reminded me a lot of your dad in his like fashion sense. He wore a very similar, maybe not red, but kind of like that thin jacket, that spring kind of jacket. He was very thin and wiry. He always wore a white t-shirt seemingly everywhere. Mm-hmm. And he kind of, other than he had a buzz cut, he kind of reminded me that he was almost modeling himself after Dean from this era.
Question, Dana, how old was your dad? When was he born?
1940. He would have been 15.
Okay, so my grandfather is older than your dad, but that's how he dressed. He was military, so he had the crew cut, and then he had the windbreakers, the weird kind of khaki pants that weren't khaki, they're like nylon, and he'd wear polos and like button downs, and yeah.
My dad, when he was in high school, had his hair slicked back. He had a ducktail, which was common. He kind of hung out in that same kind of rough crowd.
He also wore a lot of cuffed jeans, didn't he? Like, it wasn't rolled up like Dean does in this movie, but I swore he wore a lot of like cuffed jeans.
Well, let's just put that I get my short legs from him. And yeah. But I don't remember him wearing too many cuffed jeans. He used to wear some jeans, but then he started wearing more, like brown and tan and jean type material. He just, by the time I was married and started and having a family, he acted like he was about 20 years older than he was. And yeah.
Okay. Peterson, what's your relationship to the film?
So, perhaps embarrassingly, this is a movie that I was like very activating for me at a certain age. Discovered it as I was becoming a cinephile and was starting to really dive deep into kind of the history of performers, the history of, just the industry in general, right? Dean was somebody that, I lost my mother when I was 9. Dean lost his mother when he was young too. And, is a dumb 16-year-old or whatever, 15 years old, latching on to like, oh, I was not super angry, but I had frustrations like every teenager does. And this movie kind of spoke to me in some way. And I felt kind of a connection to Dean in some way. Watched it a bunch in high school. Kind of studied it. I actually wrote a paper on James Dean for my 1950s and 60s class. And, I hadn't seen it in, I'd say at least 17 years. I don't think I've seen it since college. I've seen clips and I've watched clips of that, things like that, but watched it a bunch in high school and kind of felt really connected to it. And then as I became a more kind of wide cinephile, watched more things and realized, this is still a very good movie, but it's not the deepest movie. And it really hit, I think, at a perfect time. And if Dean does not pass away, I wonder if it's quite as well remembered. But it's a very strange film. And I think you don't think about that when you watch it at 15 or 16. It's a really strange, kind of formless movie in some ways. And I think that's to its credit. I think it's interesting because you're not quite sure where it's going. But kind of like watching, I actually watched this movie with a group sort of for about 30 minutes because in high school, my stepsister's husband, he was like, oh, let's go to your room. Because I had a TV in my room. He wanted to dip. And he wanted my stepsister wouldn't let him dip. And so I just put on the first movie that was in there. And he was a little drunk. And he was like, what are we watching? What is this? What's this guy playing with a monkey?
I guess I agree. I'm not really sure what this film is completely about. So with that, Dad, do you have our plot summary ready for us?
I do. It's not going to help, but...
Okay.
Rebel Without a Cause explores teenage rebellion and emotional confusion in 1950s America. The movie stars James Dean as Jim Stark, a troubled teenager who struggles to fit in after moving to a new town. His parents, played by Jim Backus and Ann Doran, constantly argue, leaving Jim feeling misunderstood and angry. At his new high school, Jim quickly gets into trouble with a local gang led by Buzz Gunderson, played by Corey Allen. When a chickie run ends in tragedy with Buzz's death, Jim quickly becomes the enemy of the gang. Afterward, Jim finds himself drawn to Judy, Natalie Wood, Buzz's girlfriend, who also feels neglected by her parents. The two bond over their shared loneliness and confusion about adulthood. They are joined by Plato, Sal Mineo, a shy and troubled boy who looks up to Jim as a father figure. The three teens briefly imagine forming their own family, away from the chaos of their parents' lives. But when the police close in on them, tragedy strikes again, showing how fragile and misunderstood young people can be when they have nowhere to turn.
Thank you, Dad. So what is the film about? I will say that in trying to answer this question, I couldn't narrow in on anything that seemed to connect Plato and Judy and Jim all together. They seem to all be motivated by slightly different things and seem to have somehow overlapping but separate traumas. I don't quite understand why Judy is upset by her parents.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Judy, the whole thing with Judy is that she is still, I would assume they're junior seniors because they go to the planetarium.
And it directly says on the board, juniors and seniors.
So they're I would say, 16 to 18, which means Mineo is also playing older. So I think it's an interesting choice in Nicholas Ray's mind. But she is 16 to 18 years old and still needs and craves the attention of her parents. And when she tries to give to her father, I think there is a component that she might understand where he is worried about his own physical attraction to her. And I think there's a sexual undercurrent there that is hinted at. And she has no idea. And I don't think her dad does either. I think he's lashing out. And so because of that kind of relationship, she's now completely adrift. She's like, what have I done? Why is my family kind of turning against me or not showing me the affection they used to? And then obviously you have the Jim character whose dad is completely and utterly...
Well, let's stay on Judy for a second, because I think, and this is the reason why I don't understand her character, it seems like a lack of maturity and understanding of the world. You don't see anybody else having a disagreement with their parents because they can't show physical affection. And it's 1955. It's not like most dads are kissing their daughters like that. It was a much more buttoned up time where you kind of stopped after a little while. Like there's appropriate and there's inappropriate. And this got very borderline inappropriate with her trying to be like way over affectionate at the dinner table with him and not realizing like the separation in their relationship had occurred. So to me, she's lashing out because she's stunted, which is why I don't think she relates to Jim. Jim to me actually seems very mature by comparison. Like I know that the reputation that Dean gets from this movie is that he's somewhat immature, but I find most of the decisions he's making to be actually rather mature to be able to criticize his parents for some of the choices that they're making.
So yes, I don't disagree with you there. I think that's part of the thing that's baked into this movie is, so you have Dean, I think in the beginning, in the first hour of the film, is very immature, making very silly decisions. And then when he is now called upon to be a more mature figure by Plato and Judy, he steps up and he now starts making the decisions as an adult because he is now seen as somewhat of a father figure or more of a patriarchal figure. And I think that's also when his dad starts understanding what he's going through.
I think it occurs before that, but I'll let Dad jump in here.
Well, do you understand when the defining moment of the film is? Where the climax really is?
I think it's probably in the knife fight.
No. It's on the stairs when Jim comes to terms and realizes he needs to take responsibility for his action and tells his parents, no, I will not follow you. I will not get your lawyer. Because right up till then, if you did not notice, all of a sudden the camera shifts to a Dutch angle to show how he's utterly confused. And when he finally says, I need to go talk to the police, I need to come clean with this, it goes back in. So up until that point, it's to show that he is confused and he has no idea of where he's going or what he's doing. And then all of a sudden, there's a point of clarity. And that point forward from the rest of the film is him trying to come to terms and take responsibility for not only himself, but for Judy and for Plato.
See, I generally disagree. I think it goes back to the police station already. Yes, he's making some slightly immature situations worse by being a drunkard and being out past curfew and whatever else, and he gets picked up. But the conversation he has with, is it Fremick, I think we decided? Yeah, the lieutenant or whatever, the juvenile guy. The conversation he has is very self-aware and reflective in a way that you don't see in 16, 17, 18-year-olds. This guy is presenting a certain level of maturity in my mind that has been well apparent well before that. In most other teen angst movies where he's truly just rudderless and has no idea what he wants to do, he would be instigating the knife fight or immediately jumping in, not saying, don't come at me, I don't want any trouble, and backing off repeatedly, and only when utterly provoked, getting into that sort of trouble. Additionally, he's only getting into the chickie run after this whole commotion has come about and because he seemingly wants to fit in. But by extension, he's the person that seemingly does the right thing almost immediately upon the tragedy of watching Buzz go over the edge. Everybody else is trying to run away from their problems. I find him to be actually the most mature character in the entire movie, even over many of the adults.
So, yes, in some ways I think he certainly is, but also the reason he's in the chickie run is because somebody like calls him a chicken. It's like it tests his it quote unquote tests his manhood in some way. It's like it is so childish that you let that be the thing that gets under your skin, first of all. But I do think you made some good points, because I do think he is very mature in a lot of ways, makes some very good decisions. Like at the end of the movie, when he goes in there, if Plato just listens to him, he lives. He saved him. And I think his dad sees that and knows that, and it's kind of healed in some way, that relationship. I don't think Jim's ever going to really have a relationship with his dad where he can really look up and respect him in some way.
Yeah, I think that's quite apparent.
And it's this very strange thing where his dad's very loving. His dad's in some ways kind of taking on more of a maternal figure, and the mother is taking on more of a paternal figure, or like I'm saying this very 1950s way of the way gender roles are assigned, because now, dads are much more active and present in their kids' lives in a way they weren't 7 years ago. But it seems like his dad is very involved and really wants to connect with him. And in doing so, his dad's this kind of very ineffectual, not uncaring, but Jim is like, I need guidance. I need you to like tell me and step up to the plate and be like, hey, this is not correct. You need to be a man in this way. And that's just not the kind of support he's going to get from his father. So I think when it gets to the point where Jim's now having to make his own decisions, he's starting to realize I can make the correct decisions and come out okay in the end. Because I think Jim will, in the end of this film, yes, he's lived through a tragedy, but I think he has, in some way, matured and come to peace with himself and started to realize my family or my parents aren't going to give me what I'm exactly looking for. I have to kind of build that on my own. They're going to be there emotionally for him and care about him and give him things he needs, but they're not going to guide him in any ways.
As someone who had to grow up or mature at a very, very young age due to ineffectual parents, did you connect with this movie in a way that I probably cannot, Dad?
Probably. It did wonder, and I have yet to sort through this. It did dawn on me while I was watching it, the relationship I had with my own father. I mean, I loved him. And what crossed my mind is whether I actually respected him. I did, but I didn't. Because he had so many personal flaws and problems that he was trying to sort through all the time, that I didn't feel like I could go to him and rely on him per se. So I had to rely on myself. I had to make most of my own decisions. I had to find my own way through life. And I guess later on, I came to terms with some of it and realized I got the best I could from him. He was so warped and beaten by his own parents that he just didn't know how. And he did the best he could. I was fed. I was taken care of. I wasn't beaten. I wasn't mentally or psychologically abused. He tried to spend time with me in activities and such. It's just, I always had a hard time connecting with him because he did not know how to give himself.
Well, let's turn to to a lighter subject and go to Did You Know?
Can I toss one thing onto that? Just because I want to. One of the things that I thought about this movie, and I think this is kind of the perfect time to mention it, is I felt the link between this and Boys in the Hood so much. Because Furious Styles in that movie is like, he's showing the importance of what it means to be a father, and how to be like a father, not to be a dad, like be a true father. It is an active decision you have to make. And it's every decision you ever make if you want to be not even like an okay dad, but like it needs to be an all-consuming thing.
So last week, I think we mentioned how the sausage is made for how we select things for being on the schedule. Neither of us has seen that movie.
Ooh,
and
man, really?
I often put stuff specifically on the schedule to challenge us and to make us watch things that I know has reputation and standing and that we should probably catch up on. So it was on the short list last year. And you want to guess how many out of 5? Dana ranks these and gives them a number 1 through 5 over what he thinks should be on the short list for slotting. You want to know what he gave Boys in the Hood?
He said 1 to 5, and he said 0.5. Lower than...
No, you're giving him a little less credit, but he gave it a 2.
2? Okay.
Because he's just not familiar with it. It's not a name that he recognizes, and thus... So when we get to the scheduling episode, the live episode we're going to do at the end of the season during the Christmas holiday, just to give you guys a reveal of some things that people can come on and razz him about.
Yeah, okay.
In the comments section or otherwise.
And Dana, I think you would really like Boys in the Hood.
I know he would. That's why I put it on the list.
Right. Well, I'll try to watch it.
It's a very good film, and I think the Larry Fishburne character is so interesting and gives a great performance. Also, the youngest person ever nominated for Best Director, in John Singleton. He's 22 years old when he makes that movie, and it is the work of somebody who's far wiser and far smarter.
We are a work in progress, and our lives are such that we do not always have good ability to be in tune with what we should or shouldn't be doing at a particular moment in time.
Yes. Culture is not made nor recognized by 61-year-olds.
Yeah, and I'm not talking culture. I'm talking about, I mean, I had to watch this. I think this is the third time I've watched this film. It took the third time through for me to start seeing parallels in my own life. Because maybe it's just sometimes films are just too close to ourselves that we can't see them. You know, it's the whole thing about a fly only sees the part of the painting that it's landing on instead it has to fly back of the room in order to see it. You know, it's the same thing. And so I readily admit that I'm constantly self-critiquing me or my own reasoning, rationale, why I do certain things, behave certain ways. And sometimes seeing things in films I never thought about. Yeah.
And I also can't imagine Dana on a Saturday afternoon, sun shining. You got a nice little Saturday afternoon. You sit down on the couch. You're going to pop on one of your movies like Airplane or one of those. I don't see popping on Boys in the Hood as like, oh, let me watch this very heavy drama about inner city life of black teenagers in LA, or I think it's Compton. So yeah, I can't see you popping it on for fun because it's too heavy. And I know your line of work, it's tough. So
in essence, what we've arrived at is that his film taste and experiences would be made much better if I just selected the schedule without him, even though he complains about it when I do.
Now, I wonder, Dana, before we move on, link to Boys in the Hood, did you watch, I believe it's 1995, the Marlon Wayans film, Don't Be a Menace in South Central LA while drinking your juice in the hood?
What?
Don't be a menace in South Central LA while drinking your juice in the hood.
I have never heard of that film.
No, I have not.
And He did not take well to the movie Friday, so he is definitely not going to do something else.
Right here. Say hi. She's getting candy. Candy's behind me. You've never seen... Okay, so Don't Be Minnesota to LA while Drinking Juice in the Hood is a parody. I think it might be a Zucker film that they produced at least about...
he hasn't seen Basketball.
Well, I mean that's not that unsurprising.
Well, Anyway, did you know? The exterior of the mansion where the main characters confront each other with guns, as well as the empty pool in which they sit and discuss their lives, previously appeared in what Best Picture nominated film?
Sunset Boulevard, I'm going to guess.
That is correct. The pool had been built specifically for Sunset Boulevard as a condition of renting the property from its owner, Mrs. Jean Paul Getty.
Wait, is that like the Getty family?
I would assume so.
Yes.
Jean Paul, John Paul. Yeah, it's got to be. That's wild.
All right. Did you know James Dean was injured several times while shooting the switchblade fight, during which a real weapon was actually used? James Dean got angry when Nicholas Ray stopped the knife fight scene after noticing that Dean had been cut on the ear and was bleeding. Dean screamed at him, "Don't you ever cut a scene while I'm having a real moment."
Method acting at its finest.
Yep. Did you know? The opening scene in the movie with Jim Stark and the toy monkey was improvised by James Dean after the production had been shooting for nearly 24 hours straight. He asked Nicholas Ray to roll the camera that he wanted to do something. Ray obliged, and the improvisation went on to become the famous opening scene. There's actually more on that scene, but I cut that for time here. Did you know? Natalie Wood was first considered too young for the role of Judy. Even though she was the same age as the character, she was at least 5 years younger than all of the other candidates except Margaret O'Brien. She adopted a mature woman's hairstyle, started wearing heavy eye makeup, and eventually attracted the notice of director Nicholas Ray, 43 at the time, who then began an affair with the 16-year-old and gave her the part.
Okay.
70 years ago. Wait, hold on. In 1955, what was the age of consent?
It depended by state.
Yeah, which is probably, I don't know if I want to go back and
Age of
really
consent
Google.
Age of consent in Wisconsin is 16. Okay? It's bizarre. You can have relations with a 16-year-old if you're not older than 19. And it's not a crime. Just don't take a picture of her, because then you can go to prison. The sex laws are so bizarre and so, yeah.
Did you know? The part where Jim and Judy find Plato wearing one blue sock and one red sock was not scripted. Sal Mineo actually put them on that way by mistake. And finally, did you know? T-shirt sales soared after James Dean wore one in this film. Compare this to when Clark Gable had a shirtless scene in It Happened One Night, where they actually dropped by 40%. The power of film and cultural symbols. And with that, we will take our first break, and we'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 284th episode, we welcome back Jailan Salman to discuss All About Eve from 1950, celebrating its 75th anniversary. Written and directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, cinematography by Milton Krasner, music by Alfred Newman, starring Betty Davis, Ann Baxter, George Sanders, Celeste Holm, Hugh Marlowe, Thelma Ritter, and Marilyn Monroe. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Before we get much further, Peterson, what's going on with you and where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Peterson W. Hill at all socials, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, any of those. And then it's Worst with Midnight Podcast. You can check us out at WSAM Pod. All socials as well. We've got a great back catalog of movies. We've got a John Carpenter series, which I was not on, but Paul Thomas Anderson, Wes Anderson, you can go check out. And here, we've got 7 a couple weeks ago and Sporadicus last week. And yeah, and then you kicked me out.
We're not doing it because we wanted to necessarily. Although you have been hogging the mic for quite a while here.
It's true.
We just need to get some other voices on occasionally.
I get it.
But that takes us to our weekly drop of the Cinema Legacy Poll. As we left you last week, we had numbers 79 through 71. And just for a quick recap on that, that was a tie at 79 between Mad Max Fury Road and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. At 78, we had The Red Shoes. 77, All the President's Men. 76, La La Land. 75, Modern Times. 74, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. A tie at 72 between E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Beauty and the Beast. And 71 was Ordinary People. So for tonight, we will be counting down from 69 through 61. We'll start here at the tie at number 69 between 2 movies that are vastly spread out in their subject matter and genres. We have Spirited Away from 2001 that we'll be covering next year on the show. And we have 2006's Children of Men.
Both good films.
I have not seen Children of Men. I know Dad has seen neither of these. So interesting. I really don't know that much about Children of Men, but it has been suggested to us on multiple occasions. It didn't end up making next season's list of things on the schedule, but I'm sure at some point we will grab it and cover it. It just may not be in the next few seasons.
Yeah, so I guess you were right about 16 when it came out, Children of Men?
Yes, it would have been the same year as The Departed, which was like one of the first true movies that I watched where I felt like, oh, this is what an adult movie is.
Yeah.
And I don't mean adult movie being like adult movie, but you know what I mean.
When you're walking through Blockbuster.
Because you watched those earlier.
That's true. Moving on, let's go to number 67. We have a tie here as well between another 2 films that I guess are somewhat heavy dramas, but are very different in genre. We have 2001's Memento, which we'll be covering next season. And then we also have the Best Picture winner of 1992, Unforgiven, which we have also covered on the show so far.
Yes.
So you're welcome, Kieran. It made the list.
Hey, it was on my list. It was in the 20s, 22, 23, something like that.
It had to be on a bunch of people's lists or it wouldn't have made it this far.
A great film. It's
Sure.
my favorite Eastwood.
I think for most people, that's probably true.
Yeah, I mean, and Eastwood's made some great films, but that's my personal favorite.
I guess I've never asked Kieran, as the Eastwood defender that he is, if he prefers Unforgiven or $1 Million Baby. I know that he has a more personal connection to $1 Million Baby, but if I asked him to choose, I wonder what he would say.
I'd love to hear him try to defend Every Which Way But Loose.
Well, we can have that opportunity.
I think we should.
He's been crying bloody murder that we didn't do Dirty Harry because we chose the Lord of the Rings series instead of it.
Yes, I like Dirty Harry.
I do too, but it's not the Lord of the Rings.
No, it certainly is not. It's more entertaining.
No. Anyway, let's move to number 65 here. We also have another tie. This is actually a list or a section of the episode or the list overall that has 4 ties tonight. So this is tie number 3.
Wow.
I know, it was kind of weird how it worked out that way, but we have a tie between a film we have just discussed on another podcast from 1982. We have John Carpenter's The Thing. And we also have a film that I know placed highly on somebody on this show's overall list. We have 1952's Ikiru.
Oh, okay. I like The Thing quite a bit. It's very fun, but I wouldn't have it this high up. But Ikiru, I think, is a true masterpiece.
Some people think The Thing might be the best horror film ever made. I've heard that bandied about.
It's a good one, but it would not be in my top 5 probably of horror. Probably be my top 10 though.
I think it's a movie I highly respect. It is not a film I necessarily enjoy watching, but I can understand why people do.
Yeah. And y'all have not seen Akira, right?
I started it, but I didn't finish it for this project. It was like one of the last films I was trying to get in before we turned in the lists, and then I have not returned to finish it. However, I did see, who was it?
Living.
Yes, but I'm trying to think of the actor.
Bill Nye.
I still saw Bill Nye's Living a couple of years ago, which I really enjoyed. So now having to return to the original source material for that.
And Annie Lou Wood, the girl
Annie
from
Lee? Okay.
Yeah, from White Lotus. She's the kind of younger female in that, like the kind of second lead that
I guess I didn't realize that was her. But yeah, it's been a few years.
Yeah, well, when the White Lotus started, I was like, where have I seen this girl? She is so striking looking, and I mean, she's attractive, but very unconventionally, but she's so striking looking. And I was like,
she's most notable for a Netflix TV series called Sex Education.
Okay, I've not seen that show.
I saw a couple of episodes. It was not my cup of tea, but I was, of course, as a red-blooded heterosexual male, not going to watch something called Sex Education.
But I could see Dana really latching onto Akira.
Yes, I would agree. And funny enough, now that it places on the list, it gets automatic entry onto the schedule for season 8.
2027. Yeah.
2027.
Yeah.
As well as The Thing also gets automatic placement onto the list.
Which is also be 2082.
Hey, think of this, Dad. The minute we cover it for the show, we can be done with it forever.
True.
Have you never seen it, Dan, or have you seen it and just
seen
hate
it?
He's seen The Thing a couple of times. He watched it with me when we did it for my Madison film discussion group, and then he watched it, obviously, to cover for 1982 for the Rev Almanac.
It's a good film. It's just not something...
He doesn't watch those for pleasure.
Yeah.
It's not a fun horror watch. It's a tough one.
And finally, our last tie of the evening, we have number 63. We have two films that are utterly different, and yet are two of, I think, our personal favorites. We have 2014's Whiplash, which we've covered on the show, the other Damien Chazelle film. And then we have Steven Spielberg's 1998 classic, Saving Private Ryan. Yes, Dad, express your feelings.
Both should have been Best Picture winners.
Well, in the annals of the Rev Almanac, they were, as picked by yours truly.
Whiplash would lose to Boyhood that year, but it's probably my number 2 for me. So I love Whiplash. It was just, I love Boyhood a lot.
14 is an underrated year in overall film.
And what wins is a pile of dog shit.
No, I actually kind of liked Birdman this last time around. Like the first time I watched it, I was not that impressed. This last time when I watched it for prep for 2014, I got it a little bit. Would I say it's better than some of the other films of that year? No, but I still think that it was worthy of at least the nomination.
I haven't seen it in 11 years, so I probably should give it a rewatch.
And I will say, for what it's worth, Michael Keaton is fantastic in that movie. And for me, probably, well, I don't remember who I nominated that year to win, but he's at least in that conversation of like 2 or 3 people that probably should win Best Actor that year. Like, oh, I remember. I ended up picking Gyllenhaal for Nightcrawler, but still, like, Keaton's a very close second.
The performances aren't the problem with that film for me. I think it's very well acted. Emma Stone's very good. Norton's very good.
It might be the aesthetic for you.
No, it's not that. I just think it has nothing.
All right, I won't put my finger on it. All right, and finally, our last two for the evening. Number 62, we have a personal favorite of mine that ranks in my top 10 favorite films of all time. We have another one we've covered on the history of the show, Good Will Hunting from 1997.
Are you doing blurbs for yourself and Dana?
I think ours will be up on social media at some point, yes.
Okay, I just didn't know if either of you had one of your top 10s pop up yet.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Which makes sense because the format of this is built by you. So,
Well, let me look here once, because I know that I'm pretty sure I have the quotes breakdown somewhere in here.
I kept moving stuff in and out of my top 10 so much I forgot to.
No, none of my top 10 have come in yet, and only one of my top 10 didn't make the list. And that was Harakiri.
Harakiri, yeah. Huh.
Which I would love to cover next, or when we select it in 2 years for that season, but I just have a hard time thinking that my dad's going to remember that name or be wanting to watch another Japanese film.
I mean, it is the highest rated film on Letterboxd.
It is, and for a good reason.
Yeah. It didn't make my list just probably because I hadn't seen it in 17 years. I just didn't get to it. So,
yeah.
I need to get back to it. I need to watch it again.
All right. And finally, we have yet another Best Picture winner at number 61, a film we will be covering next season. We have our second of the Lord of the Rings movies with The Return of the King from 2003, our last Lord of the Rings movie on the list. So we had at 119, we had The Fellowship of the Ring, and now we have The Return of the King at number 61.
I would not have guessed that would have been above Fellowship. It is what it is, so.
So, Dad, if I have this right, I believe you have seen Unforgiven, The Thing, Saving Private Ryan, Whiplash, Good Will Hunting, and you have not seen any of the others, correct?
I think that's correct.
Peterson, have you seen all of these, or are you missing any?
I've seen them all. I've seen everything on the CLP until this point.
Okay, which one are you missing?
No, I've seen every movie on the CLP from 120 down to now. So what comes after this? The top 60? I might miss something, but so far I'm at 100%.
All right. So a few takeaways from the list here tonight. This is our first Christopher Nolan movie on the list, but I will say, and this is a tease, it is not our last Christopher Nolan movie on the list.
Mm-hmm.
So, in addition, we had 2 more international films this week with Spirited Away and Ikiru. We only have 3 more international films remaining on the list.
That's it?
That is it.
Jeez.
I think it was a situation where there was a lot of herding at the top between a certain number of films. And so you'll get a lot of very common names that appear on a lot of these kinds of lists coming up. But then a lot of people wanted to throw on honorable mention kind of stuff later on in their list. So the deeper you got, the more people would put on their favorite titles and a few other names they really wanted included. And so that's why you get some of these towards the back half where it's a little bit more of the international flair and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, somebody puts their number 40, like, oh, I really want to include, I don't know, Alcazar Balthazar. And it's not going to make the list, but it'll be on their personal list. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Whiplash is officially higher than La La Land, which dropped last week at number 76. So I don't know if that settles that debate. We'll be covering La La Land next season. We've already covered Whiplash. I don't know if we need to cover First Man or Babylon, although Dad and I really enjoyed and are defenders of Babylon.
Yes.
What about First Man?
I said First Man.
No. Are you fans of First Man?
Oh, yeah.
He was. I really didn't think that much of it, to be quite honest.
I love First Man. I kind of hate Babylon, but First Man really worked on me. And I love that Justin Hurwitz score. I think it's wonderful.
The only problem with Babylon is that every director needs somebody standing next to him and going, do you really want to think or have that included?
Yeah. I think the kind of unfettered success of several Damien Chazelle films up to that point meant he could kind of do whatever he wanted. And sometimes you need somebody to say, nope.
Very rare is the film where someone has complete creative control and it works out.
One battle after another.
Well, and that's what I mean. Rarely, honestly, the films that have more constraints, either due to budgeting or subject material or whatever else, are some of the ones that we probably remember a lot more often because they were more creative to get around those things. So a couple of other takeaways here. Spirited Away is the highest ranking animated film on the list. That is our last animated film to drop.
I mean, I love that film. It's not my Miyazaki. That's my
Personally, I like Howl's Moving Castle more.
I mean, I love pretty much all Miyazaki movies. I think he's wonderful. Totoro's mine.
I haven't seen that one yet. So that makes Toy Story at 94, 88 for Wall-E, and 72 for Beauty and the Beast before we get to 69 Spirited Away. Those are our only 4 animated films on the full list. No Toy Story 3, no Lion King, no Up, no Mononoke, or Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah.
We also had 2 more Best Picture winners tonight with The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, and Unforgiven. So far, we have 12 winners announced on the list, and there are definitely several more to come. We also had the second and last Lord of the Rings film mentioned, which we already said. Fellowship was at 119, so the Two Towers did not make the official list. We have another Kurosawa film on the list tonight, making it 4 so far, and the most common director on the list to this point. He is the only one with more than 2, save for one other person.
Steve.
Not yet.
Oh, yeah, because he probably has 40 coming up in the next 60.
Tarantino is the only other one with more than 2 films on the list so far. He has Inglourious Bastards, Jackie Brown, and Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
We also have Peter Jackson has 2 with both of the Lord of the Rings films. Giselle has 2, which we already mentioned. And Spielberg has 2 films on the list so far, with E.T. from last week and then Saving Private Ryan this week. And do you want to take a guess how many of each decade, or what decade currently leads the total films that have been so far revealed on the show or on the list?
1970s.
Okay, so the 70s currently has 7 films on the list.
I'm going to say the 2010s.
So the 2010s has 8. So you are right that it was higher, but the 1990s has 12 so far.
12.
We have a lot of people that came through the 90s that remember that era very fondly, that contributed to the list. But surprisingly or not, we have 4 films from the 20s, 3 films from the 30s, and 5 films from the 40s. So it's not like we haven't spread it out somewhat and awarded stuff to things that are a little bit older and a little bit newer.
Well, and also, inevitably, you're going to have things kind of 1970s onwards, because it's more people have seen those. You know, if something came out in 2014, anyone doing this could have seen it in a theater probably, and probably could have. So something Whiplash has a little bit of a, I'd say, kind of head start.
There are not many films within the last 10 years that ended up making the list or were nominated that often. So there are a couple that are within the last 10 years, but those are still coming up. So any other takeaways from this group of 10?
No, I mean, it's another good drop of films. I mean, I'd watch pretty much any of these now.
For what it's worth, Gmode has covered 27 out of the 62 films released on the list so far. Those are all linked in the official list kept on the Gmode website. And I personally have seen 51 out of the 62. So I do have some films to catch up on, but I think we're getting pretty close to the point in the list where I think I've seen just about every film that might be remaining. But otherwise, if there is nothing else for tonight, just a reminder to everybody that the official list is up on the Gmode website. That's RyanDuncanStudios.com/Gmode podcast. And you can find everything there. Otherwise, you can scour our socials for all the other content while we're still ongoing. This will be going, or the drops of the list will be going until Christmas Eve, to be more precise, as our top 2 films will be released on Christmas Eve. And then, I don't know, we might have like some sort of a reaction show or something, just discussing the list in totality, something to that effect. But yes, definitely keep up to date with everything Gmode at Gmode Podcast on any of the socials, YouTube, Letterboxd, TikTok. Oh, I don't even remember them all. Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. You can find us in most places. So let's get back into the film for the evening. We left off at Best Performance. Dad, who do you have down?
James Dean. He's the film.
I think he overcompensates for a lot of the flaws in the film. I think Peterson was kind of talking about it before, that it is not a flawless film by any stretch, but I think him becoming the icon and the symbol out of the movie, but also probably delivering the most nuanced performance out of anybody, to me is what kind of saves or even makes this film notable, other than him dying and then it coming out after that.
So is he yours as well?
Yes.
Okay. He is mine as well. And I will just add very quickly that I think part of what makes the performance, I think, so good is that the beginning when you're tearing me apart, I think it's supposed to feel stilted, and it's supposed to feel a little like, guys, what's he doing? Because he's acting like a child. He wants to feel like a child and is acting like one. And then by the end of the movie, as you said, he's a much different Jim and has had to assume much more responsibility. And when he has a very similar cry at the end when Plato is killed, it's much softer and much more internalized, but it's a very similar kind of outlash. Yeah, I think James Dean's an easy and the right choice.
So best secondary performances, I have Jim Backus. I know that we've talked a lot about that Jim Stark and the relationship with his dad is very complicated, and that there might be just this lack of respect that he has for him. I know Dad specifically highlighted that, relating it to his own experiences at times. However, I don't find that Jim Backus is necessarily lacking in respectability per se. Like, I get why Jim feels in kind of an outdated masculinity point of view, feels that his dad is weak or unassuming. And because he can't give him some straight answers, like, I understand that point of view too, but there's clearly a love and a bond that his dad has for him that he understands, which is why he keeps going back and giving his dad opportunities. He wants his dad to, I hesitate to say earn his affection, but it's kind of in that way. And so I find that character to be the most engaging, or at least most nuanced outside of James Dean and Jim Stark, because to me, the movie is very much explained by the relationship between those two characters.
Yeah, I think I hit the nail on the head. And I think he's really looking for the father figure that he feels he needs, not necessarily the father figure that his dad is. Instead of accepting his dad is who he is, he's wanting him to be something he's not, which is, I would say, probably a father figure at least 30, 40 years in the future. Like, he is acting like a father figure from a much different generation. And so I think that's part of the confusion he has. He's like, hey, I don't even know how to interact because this isn't what dads act like. This isn't a dad. This is kind of a companion. And I think he's there for him emotionally, but not kind of a guiding principle. So Jim Backus is actually mine as well. Mr. Magoo himself.
Mr. Thurston Hall III.
So this is another 3 for 3?
No.
Oh.
I have Sal Mineo. I think Sal Mineo, for being the young actor that he was, showed a lot of range and depth in the character. He's lost. Half the time you go from, wanting to shake him and go, stop being like this, to come here, I just want to hug you. And Sal Mineo had that persona throughout his career. I would have loved to have seen what he would have accomplished, if anything, later in his life, if he wouldn't have been murdered at 37, I believe.
37.
So, in a mugging, which I've heard some that said it's a mugging. I've heard others that said because he was gay that it was targeted. But somebody was actually convicted of the murder. But anyway, I think Sal Mineo had a very layered performance, and every time I've seen Sal Mineo in various things, I'm always impressed by how much he is emotionally involved in the character he's portraying.
Did you realize, because last week we talked about Exodus, It was the question for the Ask Dane Anything from Kieran. Sal Mineo got his second and only other Oscar nomination for Exodus. So 2 weeks in a row, we're talking about the two movies. Or, well, we didn't discuss it, but at least brought up the two movies that Sal Mineo was nominated for.
Yeah.
And since you said you added it to your weekend viewing, is it a film you got to?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll follow up again next week.
I had a lot of other things going on over the weekend, so.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
No.
Most charismatic, I have Natalie Wood. As immature as she acts during the film, there's just a way that, and I hate to be platitudinal, like Dad technically, I criticize him a lot for being, but she has an attractive quality that goes beyond just the physical attributes, but it's a presence of character that feels vulnerable and thus invites you in a way that I don't think there were a ton of actresses in the 50s that did that. Like there were some, but I think she does a really good job. And there's a reason she ends up getting a lot more of these younger female kind of baby deer kind of roles.
I have her as well. One of the most memorable performances she had was in Bob and Carol, Ted and Alice. Elliot Gould. I'm trying to remember who else was in it. Bob Culp, I think. Where it was it was all about wife swapping. It was extremely controversial, but
it was Robert Culp and it was Diane Cannon.
Diane Cannon, all right. I've never seen it. I've always wanted to. It's one of those that I should put down on a list and make sure I watch at some point.
It is currently available to rent in multiple different spots, but you can add it to your weekend viewing after Exodus.
Anyway. So she so personified kind of this little, I don't know how to put it.
She makes you as a protective male want to guard her.
Yeah, I guess.
It's like the baby deer syndrome. You feel the innocence and you want to protect that.
Well, and her sister was not that far off because her sister was Lana Woods, who was a former Playmate of the Year and a Bond girl. So, now he's Googling.
Well, I don't remember her being a Bond. Oh, well, yeah. Okay. All right.
Which Bond?
The Diamonds Are Forever. She plays Plenty O'Toole.
Yes.
What
are those great Bond girl names?
So I did not have Natalie Wood, but one thing I did want to say is the sequence in the house keys you into her performance and what she's doing. When they get there, they're all acting and playing like children. And it's supposed to remind you, these are kids. These are true kids. They're not out of high school. Like, they are kids. And they act like kids. Obviously, Dean acts the oldest, and he kind of is the patriarch. And then Natalie Wood and Sal Mineo both are like, they both act like kids. And they are playing house. But no, mine is Nicholas Ray. I think his direction in this is excellent. I think everything in this is big. Every emotion is big. Every shot is big. Every scene is big. And the reason I think is because when you were in high school, everything is life or death. When somebody calls you chicken, it's life or death. It's like, I need to now avenge my honor. And the only way he chose to direct it was every emotion has to be heightened. And he picks a great actor in the center with James Dean, and he lets him kind of really show out and really kind of do a lot of capital A acting, which is what I think the character really needs. I think it really needs somebody to come in and kind of command the screen. And sometimes those choices work. Mostly they do, but sometimes, they're a little stilted and a little off. Yes. So I think Nicholas Ray is the one for me.
All right, let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. I have Police Station, which basically covers the entire first portion of the movie. I have Planetarium. Then I have the knife fight, which directly follows the planetarium scene. Then I have Chickie Run. Then I have Plato's Demise, which I think covers from about the point where the boys discover him in the gazebo up through the point where the final moments of the film. I know that's a large section of the film, but it's kind of all wrapped into one thing, more or less, to me.
You can't really cut it off. It's tough to just continuous, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of continuous from him being on the run to him ending up dead. So, is there anything else that either of you would like me to add here?
Yes.
Yep.
I had talked about what I call the confession, which is where he comes clean to his parents in the house and says, I need to fess up to what I did. And, I need to be somebody of honor. And so I think that's a very poignant scene. And so I think that needs to be included, because I'll just tell you right up in advance, I think that was my best scene.
I agree. Not with best scene, but I do think that should be included.
Okay, anything else?
Not from me.
All right, hearing none, then Police Station, Planetarium, Knife Fight, Chickie Run, Do the Right Thing, and Plato's Demise. Dad's already given his best scene, but Peterson, what do you think is the best scene?
I think, whatever you would call it, the Plato on the run, the final 20 minutes, I think is an exceptionally built sequence of sustained tension. And the whole time you're just like, make a different decision. Plato, make a different decision. And you think for a second it's going to go well, because you see that Dean gets the bullets and he hands the gun back to him, and he does it. I mean, it's very smooth how he does it. And unfortunately it doesn't end well, but I think it's very well choreographed, that entire sequence.
Just for the sake of being different, I'm going to go with the Police Station, just because I think even though he's drunk, there are signs yet to who his character is in that sequence, whether it's offering Sal Mineo his jacket or it's kind of paying attention to what's going on with Judy. Yes, he has kind of that weird temper tantrum that we mentioned, you're tearing me apart, which it feels very forced and in kind of a odd way to carry yourself. But then he has that conversation with the juvenile officer, which again gives me this diagnosis that he's much more self-aware and he understands kind of the dynamics of things that are going around. And maybe he's in some ways more mature than his parents are and gets what's going on in a way that they probably don't give him credit or respect for.
That scene does highlight that the parents just do not understand the current world. Things have changed so quickly, and it does. I think that his dad, Jim Backus, is playing somebody who's probably a little bit older than he really would have been at that age. He's playing somebody I feel like he's in his 50s. So he seems a little bit old to be his dad. At that time, at least. And I think that's important. It's further extending that generational divide.
And I will say that's also my favorite scene. So what are the favorite scenes for either of you?
I will point out one of the things I thought about is you made the comment about maturity. Maturity and self-awareness are not the same thing. People can be mature and understand circumstances, but yet not be self-aware of their own situations or their own, how they interplay or what their responsibilities in a circumstance. Because I've known a lot of mature people who just do not understand their role in a situation.
Okay, you can be mature without being introspective or self-reflective, but you also can mature faster by being introspective or self-reflective.
Okay, and so I just wanted to make that
rarely
distinction.
Find that people who are that are not mature people.
Okay, I understand your point, but I'm just saying it's not a mutually exclusive pool. And as far as favorite scene, mine is the police station, because I have seldom seen in a film how you establish and know what each of the characters or the primary characters are about so quickly, like within the first 30 minutes of the movie.
Oh, I can give you a few examples. North by Northwest, you know all you need to know in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Honestly, with a lot of Hitchcock movies, he does some establishing of character like really early on in those movies. Like the really good Hitchcock movies, you know who the primary characters and who you're going to follow and why you're following them pretty quickly.
Well, that's why the opening of Psycho is so good. Obviously, you get more characters down the line, but the opening of Psycho pulls you in. And you're like, oh, you know exactly the motivations of everybody in these scenes. And then obviously Anthony Perkins comes in and throws all that to the wind. But yeah, I mean, Hitchcock was, he was the fucking best.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. What are some other good ones where like you know exactly who all the characters are right away?
I think
well,
you
the
could
usual
pretty much
suspect.
say that with Rio Bravo.
Yeah, Rio Bravo's kind of like that.
Armageddon. That's a one. You know who everyone is. Within 10 minutes, you know everything.
I already have to cover one Michael Bay movie next year on the schedule.
It's next year. The Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, The Rock fucking rules. Come on. The Rock's
Never
the
seen
best.
I like The Rock.
The Rock is incredible. The Rock rules.
Okay. If you say so.
It does.
I will be taking out my flamethrower to Michael Bay. Anyway, moving on. What's your favorite scene?
Just to be a little different, I'm going to say the planetarium. I love that, and kind of, I think, puts you in the mindset of these three disparate characters who, as you said, they're all suffering from their own different trauma, but it's all parental related. You know, she still feels like she needs parents in that, you know, parental affection. She's not getting it. Jim's looking for guidance, and Plato, you know, I can't really tell, and it's hard to tell exactly.
He's looking for parents who give a shit.
Well, so did Plato's parents, did they abandon him and basically just paying the nanny to watch him?
Yeah.
The father split. The mother took off.
He's in New York.
Yeah. The mother kind of couldn't handle it, so she just kind of left and pays the nanny to take care of him. She's traveling.
The check that he saw when he's grabbing the gun, it's $697, basically $700. So for 1955, that's a good sum of money. That's a lot of money.
Well, you saw the house that he's living in, and they're not poor.
No, not by any means. And you know, obviously all of them, he dresses well. But no, so I think the planetarium to me really hones in on a couple things. But one is the outsized emotions. Like the guy who's giving this discussion of kind of the celestial life he's making it so kind of somber, but then he's saying the most crazy things to make it engaging. You talk about like, oh, and then the world ends. He makes it so dramatic, and it kind of keys you in that the film is operating on a more heightened level. And then there's some poetry to that scene. There's a poetry to what he's saying, and kind of really keying into feeling lost, and then realizing as you look up at all these stars, you're like, but also I'm lost, but who really cares? I'm already alone in the universe. I do really like that scene.
Just for context, the check would be worth about $8,800 today.
I wonder if that's for the month.
I figured it would be, yeah.
That he's like, hey, this is your salary and what you like, you know, food and all that.
It basically says child support on the check.
Yeah. So I'd imagine they're paying the rent or the mortgage on the house, and then that's just for you two. Just, yeah.
So then, most indelible moment. I have a feeling that this might be universal, but it's the ending of the film. It's basically the last 20 minutes. And if anything, Plato being shot, and then James Dean crawling down to the leg of his father?
Yeah, I think so. And unlike when I said earlier, I do find the last 5 minutes is really the most indelible moment. Really, the moment when Plato starts running out to it finally concludes.
I think part of the reason that scene in particular stands out for me is I watched The Sopranos like much younger than I ended up watching this film. I want to say my first time with this film is only like in the last 10 years or so, probably because it was on the original AFI list. And so I caught it to cross that off of my list. But I saw The Sopranos when I was like in my teenage years. So I had that Christopher Moltisanti rehashing when he's in the actors class, that one episode, more fresh in my mind. And so that's part of the reason I think for me that it reminds me so much of that section of the film, because I was familiar with kind of how this movie ended before I ever saw it.
Question about the ending. Just curious, because
which ending? The Sopranos or this movie?
No, this movie.
I know you haven't seen The Sopranos.
No, I have.
Oh, I thought you hadn't.
No, I definitely have.
Okay.
Yeah, I love The Sopranos.
Oh, that's right. It's just The Office that you're completely out on.
And also like SpongeBob, that was one. Family Guy, they were like, oh, they killed off a character. I'm like, the show's still on. But no, the moment at the very end when the title card, the end, pops up, and the guy who's giving the speech in the planetarium, he's just like walking into work. And all the cop cars are leaving, and I'm like, what's this guy? Is he just like walking into work? And did y'all catch that?
No.
Yeah, it's the guy, he's, whatever, it's like 6:30 in the morning, and he's just walking up.
Well, I mean, gotta go to work.
What do you call today? Tuesday.
Dad, you're up.
I had Plato's demise. So I agree with everybody else.
All right, so that looks like a good spot for our second break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmode Podcast and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 255 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Brad Everett Young, 46, actor, celebrity photographer. Grey's Anatomy, The Artist, Love and Basketball, I Love You Man. Ben Lewis, 46, Australian stage actor. Stage performance, Love Never Dies, The Phantom of the Opera. Kimberly Habert Gregory, 52, American actress. Vice Principals, Kevin, Probably Saves the World, Craig of the Creek. And Jerry Leggio, 90, American actor. Blaze, The Badge, American Violet.
And so we remember these here fondly with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. Let's move to best funniest lines. I will take the rather obvious one from the start here. You're tearing me apart. Lisa.
Jim Stark. I woke up this morning, and the sun was shining, and it was nice, and all that type of stuff. And the first thing I saw, you. And I said, boy, this is going to be one terrific day, so you better live it up, because tomorrow you'll be nothing. You see? And I almost was.
Jim Stark. If I had one day when I didn't have to be all confused and I didn't have to feel like I was ashamed of everything. If I felt that I belonged someplace,
Jim Stark. I've got the bullets. Doing my
Okay.
best Gosling impression.
Plato. Do you think the end of the world will come at nighttime? Jim Stark. At dawn.
Jim Stark. I'd bet you'd go to a hanging. Plato. I guess it's just my morbid personality.
Jim Stark. I don't know what to do anymore except maybe die.
Looking up at the stars in the planetarium. Jim Stark. Once you've been up there, you know you've been someplace.
Jim Stark. If he had guts to knock Mom cold once, then maybe she'd be happy and that she'd stop picking on him because they make mush out of him. Just mush.
Jim Stark. Nobody talks to children. Judy. No, they just tell them.
That was it for me.
I'm out.
Plato Crawford. If only you could have been my dad. We could have had breakfast in the morning. And finally, Jim Stark. You're not listening to me. A line that is said by every child to every parent at some point.
And what was my response? This is not a democracy. This is a benevolent dictatorship.
Except you never said the benevolent part.
Yes, I did.
No.
Yeah.
You more often quoted your own father. Your ass is grass and I'm the lawnmower.
And if you don't like my rules, get your own house. And then you proceeded to ask my dad if he'd ever said that. And he goes,
said yes.
Damn right.
Anyway, moving on. All right, well, let's go to the Stanley rubric. We have legacy up first. Legacy is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out to today, so roughly 1960 to today. What is the legacy of this film? As split between two groups, the industry and the general audience. 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
I'll go first.
Okay.
The industry has spent, I would say, probably most of the last 70 years making films that are geared towards a high school age audience because they sit in the theaters, they buy the tickets on a regular basis, and that's one of the things they've done. They've tried to gear films towards them since this time frame. So it's not as clear and prevalent as I would say, but they also had spent a lot of time promoting the rebel, the anti-culture characters. It got more prevalent in the 60s. So I'm going to give it a 4 for the industry. It's not spot on, but from a long-term view, I can't see that it didn't start around this time and this film being a key. From the public, somebody posted, or I saw when I was doing my research, that if you showed a picture of James Dean to any American walking down a street and ask who this is, 90% of them would be able to identify it as James Dean, even though they've never seen a James Dean film and have not been born within 20 years of his death. So I can't think of any more public legacy than James Dean perpetuating this film, which, again, I talk about the fact, and we brought this up before we started recording, that Happy Days, Fonzie opens in the opening credits or opening scenes when they're playing the Happy Days theme, opens the door to his closet, and there's James Dean in a leather coat, and he slicks his hair back and goes like that to the James Dean poster. Everybody has seen that. Everybody knows that. Everybody perceives that. Whether it's actually accurate or not, I don't know. But I have to give it a full 5 for the public. I'm at a 9 overall.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with the points you've made per se. I think they're all factual. My issue here is, are we representing James Dean as being synonymous with the film and the film thus being iconic because of him? Or is he just a iconic figure and happens to be in the movie and thus promotes it? Because I guess that's maybe my separation point on this. I don't know how many people that know the film versus know him as a figure or a symbol.
It's not separation. If you were to go up to somebody and ask, what film has James Dean been in?
I don't know if anybody could name any of them. This is the most
Maybe,
likely.
maybe not. But if they could name one, it's Rebel Without a Cause. They're not going to name Giant. They're not going to name East of Eden.
No, of course not. It would be this one. And I think this is the one he's most iconically connected with. And frankly, of a lot of the pictures, they're very him in this white t-shirt or with the red coat from this movie. So I do think there's some iconography that is synonymous and that people see in places, particularly like if you go to any of those throwback diners that are being like, this is the 50s and we have booths shaped like old convertible cars and he's on the wall for some reason. And, you know, he's synonymous with this era, even though it's only a 2-year period, essentially, maybe even a year and a half.
We go to a diner in Middleton when we're down by you, and they have pictures. Who? Elvis, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. So I guess I have a tough time trying to give it quite the 5 that you do. Like, I have no great argument against it other than I just wonder if we're judging the movie or are we judging James Dean? If it's James Dean, it's a full 5 for me. But if it's the movie per se, I find that a little bit more difficult because it has not survived the test of time because I think the movie is very flawed.
It is very flawed. But there are so many iconic moments from the film that James Dean is the center of, that it has outlived the film collectively.
Well, one of the films we talked about last week, and I just mentioned here with my impression of Gosling, La La Land. And the whole point of that scene where that movie's even brought up is he's knowledgeable on older culture. I mean, he's trying to incorporate, and he loves jazz, which is a throwback thing. And the person who's the more modern person has no idea what he's talking about. So while they may know James Dean, I don't know if they know this movie or anything from it necessarily, other than they've seen some pictures that maybe portray it. And so I'm going to end up with a 4 on the audience. And here's where I will disagree with you, or I will differ. I think your reasoning on the industry side of things is flawed. While there are some movies that were made for teens, it was not a full staple of the industry until the 80s. It just wasn't.
Really? Gidget?
You can find a couple of examples, but it is not prevalent in the way that they were making films in the 80s and the 90s, specifically geared towards teens.
All the late 50s, early 60s Elvis films, the beach films, are not geared towards teens? Oh, please.
No, so I think maybe I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, Tom. Yes, they had those films, but the 90s, 80s, and until today, there's serious movies made for teenagers that don't play down to them. Those Elvis movies, the beach films, those play down to teenagers. They're like the lowest common denominator. You know, it's something similar to this would be maybe it's a little bit younger, but like Fault in Our Stars, or maybe a better Shailene Woodley, like The Spectacular Now.
Yeah.
That is a movie for teenagers that adults can watch, but you would feel very, because I love The Spectacular Now, but like you feel very connected to those characters, and you see them and you recognize them.
Yeah, the teen drama types. Like, I'll even lump in, and I don't think it's playing down to it, but you mentioned Clueless last week. I would put Clueless in kind of this same factor, in the same way that I put Superbad in this same category. Like, I know that this film is much more serious than either of those films, but it is exploring deeper topics. And I don't think, with the exception of maybe like American Graffiti, that there were a lot of films of this ilk. I just, who was taking seriously the Elvis films? Like, you occasionally had a To Sir with Love that would kind of be in this vein, but it was not like they were making them as a staple like they were in the 80s when John Hughes was doing it, and then you had Schumacher doing his own stuff, and then et cetera, et cetera. So I just
that became in large part because of the division in cultural norms, which was older people did not go to the movies at the same regularity that younger crowds did. So they started gearing up towards younger audiences in the early 80s.
All right. Well, I need to let Peterson go, so I'm going to give it a 3.5. I have a 7.5.
I'm going to be a little bit closer to Dana. And part of the reason is leave out the Elvis stuff, but I think the 80s and 90s, yes, malls really started the 1950s and 60s, but malls really became a staple in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Obviously, they're dead now. Nobody goes to the mall anymore. But I think malls really led to the traction of those. But for me, the audience side, yes, I will admit, I think James Dean casts a larger shadow than this movie does. But all of the iconography that you see with James Dean, it all comes from this movie, if not like Life magazine, right? None of it's from East of Eden or Giant, which I do think he is better in Giant than this film. I think he has a better performance. And I think he's very, very good here. But a Giant, I think, a more mature performance. Obviously, he ages in that too. So he plays
right.
I think 20, 30 years. But I think Nicholas Ray, Natalie Wood, Sal Mineo, these are four names that are kind of huge figures in American cinema. And I don't think you get to where you are without this film. You know, I think Sal Mineo kind of makes his way from this, which is why 5 years later, he's another Oscar nomination. And I think each one of them, Natalie Wood, James Dean, and Sal Mineo would have done a lot if they hadn't all died tragically young. You know, Natalie was the oldest of them, and she was probably only in her 40s, maybe early 50s. But so I think, to me, the legacy and the audience side, I'm going to go a 4.5, and I'm going to match it with the industry as a 4.5. So I'm going right at Dana with a 9, just a little bit different math.
So that's an 8.5 average between the three of us. Let's go to impact and significance. This is a measure of the initial 5 years after the film came out. Again, what is the impact and significance among the two groups that we just discussed in the last category, the industry and the audience? 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Dad, since you went first last time, let's let Peterson go first here.
So I debated this one. I landed a 5 and 5 for both. It feels right. And the reason is because, yes, James Dean dies. And it's really difficult to speak about this film and not speak about the fact that he died 4 weeks after it's released, or before it's released, because more people see it, more people get interested in it. And obviously the Oscar nominations help, but I think the 5 years, you know, it gets 3 Oscar nominations. It does pretty well financially for this kind of movie. I think it's really, but I also don't know what the older demographic, if somebody in the age of 60, what they're doing with this movie for the general audience. So I'm going to go to 4. I really debated that 5. I think 4 is the correct answer. And then the industry side, you know, other than I think it really helping launch Wood and Mineo, you know, Nicholas Ray was already a working director, and he continues being a working director. I don't know in the initial 5 years how much was really boosted from this. So I'm going to go 3.5 on the industry side. So 7.5 for me.
Okay, I'm about where you are. I have a 3.5 on the industry. I think you could probably make a decent case that Mineo and Natalie Wood go on to bigger careers because they're a part of this movie and because of the cultural moment that it captured. Thus, they were spurned on to bigger and better things. Obviously, James Dean can't do that because of the situation. But in essence, I think you've got to give it a little bit of credit on that. In addition, it has some Oscar nominations, but it couldn't be nominated twice. So because Dean was already going to be nominated for East of Eden, he couldn't be nominated again in the same category. They had rules about being nominated twice for lead actor in the same year for different performances. I'm not sure why, but they had that, probably to try and spread the wealth because we needed participation awards apparently in the 50s even. Regardless, I think the cultural impact was high, but also let's not overstate that in the moment, this was a successful film, but I don't think it was like near the top of the grossing films of the 50s. So it wasn't a universally like high rated film. It appealed to a certain demographic, but I think that was kind of its limitation. So with that, I give it a 4.5 for the audience. I give it a 4 for the industry, and so thus I have an 8.5.
For me, I have the industry as a 4. The 3 nominations, but not Best Picture, not Best Director. Critics were kind of split. The public liked it, but it wasn't like a runaway best box office smash. So I'm at a 4 for the public. So I'm at an 8 overall.
Which is good because I think that is the average then. 8 average between the three of us. I do like my easy math. All right, let's go to novelty then. This is a measure of the originality of the film and the execution of the film. 5 and 5 points apiece for each of those two split here. I'll go first. Originality on this, given that there really weren't any major teenage angst films that I can point to prior to this, this is somewhat of a genesis point of this kind of genre of or subgenre of film, the heavy teen drama types. Whether you want to say that it ended up creating stuff in the aggregate over time, and we obviously had that argument a minute ago, I think that its originality lends to at least a different type of genre within the industry. So I have to give it some credit there, even if it takes a while for this to maybe catch on in the way that it was much more prevalent decades later. The execution on this thing is where I'm going to knock it. I don't know if I think Natalie Wood is very charismatic. I don't think she's necessarily a great actress in the movie. Mineo, I have my issues with. I don't know if I necessarily buy into his character all that much. I also find some of the other characters to just be acting loudly instead of truly acting. And the story to me is really where this suffers, because I don't think there's a great central narrative. I don't think the characters are particularly well developed on the page. And some of this movie is very much rescued by Dean being fairly good in the movie. And to a degree that Nicholas Ray does create some very good tense scenes in the movie when there's some kinetic energy going on, not necessarily when there's some line delivery, but rather the dramatic tension of people being chased or being in knife fights or being in the chickie run type of stuff. And then the consequences of all of those surrounding actions. So I'm going to give this a 3 on execution. I have a 7.5.
Speaking about the long tail of this movie, I think the real effect comes from the kids who saw this when they were probably 9 or 10. And then they become filmmakers later. So I think Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. Lucas was 10 when this movie comes out, and maybe 11, and then Spielberg's 8 or 9. Chances of them seeing this in theaters is probably relatively high. So I think the long tail for them is they do 30 years later start making movies about this, like American Graffiti, Sugarland Express. So I think the novelty aspect probably spoke a lot to them. And I think the feeling of watching this movie in that point in time was probably pretty groundbreaking. Nothing really like it up until this point. So I think 5. And then the execution side, I think script's not quite all the way there. Well acted, well directed. The execution, I'm going to go to 4. So 9 for me.
Originality, I can't think of too much. There was some parents versus child elements that was going on at various times. if I wanted to make a list, I could probably point to it. I'm just not going to give it a full 5 for originality. I'm going to go with a 4.5 because of that. Execution, the acting overcame a lot of deficiencies in the script and a lot of problems that I noted. I mean, I had a hard time believing, for example, that Natalie Wood could immediately go from the death of her boyfriend to loving the other guy immediately.
Well, and they all seem to like recover really quickly from multiple tragic events in the movie.
And that is, I'll say really quickly that I think that is partly the difference to me, the Oscars for story and screenplay.
Yeah. So from an execution standpoint, I'm going to go with a 3.5. So I am at an 8 overall.
Also, that just reminded me that Natalie Wood, within 5 years of this film, well, 6 years, makes another movie where a significant person in her life is murdered and immediately bones down with a guy. The other is West Side Story.
Yeah, okay.
God, obviously that's her brother in that movie, but yeah.
Yeah, it's, well, you're being a bit unfair because she kind of starts with the other guy preceding her brother dying, but yeah.
No, I know. I know. And in that, it's also about the stupidity of youth. It's like...
We'll get to West Side Story at some point. Okay? Agreed? We good? All right. Let's go to Classicness then. This is the most nuanced category we have, and it's basically whether or not the movie has aged well in any of its elements, or if it was ahead of its time, essentially. So the nuance of the category lends itself to somebody who lives in the gray, as certain lawyers do. Like my father, I have my own laundry list to bring to this category tonight, but I will let him start.
Thank you.
What?
The gray. The problem I have...
You have a problem with my phrasing there?
Whatever.
It was not an old joke. It's a common turn of phrase.
Okay. All right. Okay, gotcha.
What the fuck's your problem?
I don't have one. It's okay.
Okay. Go.
All right.
Go.
We start with a 6 from Classicness. I mean, we have a central woman character throughout the film. I have difficulty understanding exactly where she's coming from or what she's trying to say or accomplish in the film. I will give it that it does speak to the whole concept of children or young men and women struggling to understand or reach an identity of who they are. I don't give it huge points up for that because, I mean, that has become a common theme generation after generation after generation. I do think it's ahead of its time. The fact that we have juvenile or police officers trying to reach out to potential juvenile delinquents who are having difficulty and giving them some level of support structure has become a common theme in police work. I also unfortunately think that shooting an armed but bulletless victim has become a little too poignant in today's culture. So I'm going to go with an 8.5 overall.
All right. So a few of the factors that I weighed in here. -1 for the weird exchange between Judy and her dad.
Yeah, okay.
Which ends up with him slapping her, which feels very dated. -1 for the chickie run, which is definitely outdated now.
Is that something that people actually did?
Yes.
Did they?
Yes.
God, people are stupid.
When we come to the final, I have a comment about that, but okay.
People now strap themselves to all sorts of pieces of wood to get their thrill seeking. I mean, this is just another form of it. It's slightly more reckless form, but I don't see it all that much different than surfing or skydiving or any of the other numerous other just ridiculous activities that I find utterly fascinating why people think they're fun.
I'm finding these whole series of videos of people who put themselves into cars, who slingshot themselves into the air and videotape their reaction as they're screaming, as they're flying through the air, going, okay, why would you do that?
Or any of the people that go out to a lake with a giant inflatable thing, sit on one end of it, and then have people jump on the other end so that they go just rocketing into the air without having any sort of like diving experience, so that you break your ankle or whatever splashing down.
Well, that's a camp thing.
I don't care. It's still reckless and, you know, all the things that you do in youth.
Well,
and that's kind of the point.
Drag racing. The history of drag racing is this kind of thing.
Anyway, I think that the movie does get a point up for, I guess, the police violence. In a way, I can understand how this is somewhat more justified, but it feels very prescient for the moment. Particularly because Sal Mineo, I'm not sure what type of nationality or race he is, but he does not feel Caucasian to me. Maybe that's just me projecting, but anyway. I also give it +1 on a subject matter basis. I think that the teen angst and the restlessness, there's some universality in that theme making that I think still lives on. I give it +1 for the iconography of James Dean and everything else that comes out of this film, and kind of the look, the fashion sense that you could also signify through this movie. And there's a somewhat of a timelessness factor I will also give it, even though it's somewhat dated in some of the fashion sense and some of the events that things were going on. I still do think that this has enough universality to challenge that set of time, even though it doesn't apply on every front. So from that standpoint, I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay, so, and Sal Mineo's, he's born in New York, but he is Italian. So, no way.
He just feels a darker complexion.
Yeah, no, he's not white. He's Italian, and no, but so for me, I think the points up I'm going to give it are going to come. Obviously, James Dean, just the long shadow of this movie cast with him, I think gets an immediate, like, at least point. It's a moment where you have 3 young stars that one unfortunately passes away, but then Mineo and Wood have very long, fruitful careers. So I'm going to give a point up for them. Some of the datedness with kind of some of the relationships with the families, I'm going to give it a point down. So I'm going to put me at a 7. The chicken run or chickie run, I will say, yes, it's stupid, but as we said, it's, think about anything that kids do for kicks. You know, every time I watch somebody do parkour on a video, I'm like, how stupid are you? They're going to try to jump like 20 feet to land on concrete. And of course you like bash your knee, and then now you can't walk for the rest of your life. Like it's just so stupid. So I think that right there is just another version of kids being stupid. So back up to 8. And then I think the depiction of police and policing in this film is, in one way, very progressive in the sense that it's about, hey, we recognize a problem and we want to fix the problem, not incarcerate the problem. So it's wanting to help and guide kids through the phase of their life. You know, in modern parenting, one of the big phrases is like, no bad kids. There's no bad kids. Like, you have to treat every kid like their emotions are valid and they're real, because when you're 5 or 6, you're not a bad kid. You're just a kid. And that's kind of how you are when you're 16. It's like, these are all just very lost kids that need direction. And not much has changed in 70 years. Think how many 16-year-olds you know or have interacted with in your life or went to high school with that had their shit together at 16. You know? It's like...
Yeah, well...
So I think that depiction brings it up to a 9 for me. And then I think Classicness just... This movie has endured and stood the test of time. We give it one more point up just for its long tail. So I'm going to be at a 10 for Classic.
All right, so that's an 8.83 average between the three of us. Rewatchability. I'll take the objective point of view off the table on this one. While it's not terribly long, it has some definitely driftless stretches of the movie that I find to be kind of boring. Like when they're playing house, like I recognize the story aspect and how important that is, but it's just not something that's terribly interesting to me. There's also some sections of this that just either go on a little bit too long or just they don't seem like they have the right direction going on. And I don't mean that from like a director, but rather just a point of view that it's really trying to relate. The script is quite meandering. The dialogue is stilted. It's a classic, but it's not something that I feel I'm going to get much out of on repeated viewings. I think it is kind of a movie that, because of the acting, can be very taken at its surface level. And while you might gain new appreciation, it's not a movie that I look forward to like going back to repeatedly. So I'm going to give this a 3.
It's tough.
Go ahead, Peterson.
Yeah, I'll take it next. So for me, you know, I watched it a bunch when I was in high school. Easily would have said 10 when I was like 18 years old, because it was one that kind of spoke to me a lot then. You know, obviously I'm 39 years old now. My life is very different. Scary to think that I am closer to now having a high schooler than being in high school. That's a very terrifying thought for me, that I'm going to be raising what I was when I was in high school and in college.
You're 39, right?
39.
Yeah, you're at midlife. Life expectancy is 78, right? For men?
Yeah, so I'm past. Oh, yeah, I'm 39, right exactly at midlife.
So the minute you hit 40, you're on the downslope there, bud.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I should just go watch the planetarium now.
I say that for all the late 30s people that listen to this show.
Hey, well, I know Corns is 40. I think Kieran's 41.
I don't think Corns has quite hit 40 yet.
I thought he was 40, no? Or is he 39? Okay.
I think he's about to turn 40, but I don't think he's quite got there. I could be wrong.
Boy, is that going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm sure he's going to have strawberry flavored Doritos on his 40th birthday or something crazy. But for me, the rewatchability factor, you know, in today, I unfortunately had to watch this in 2 viewings because I wasn't feeling great. And I was like, I don't know. I need to get some rest. Maybe I can kick what I thought was COVID. May still be. Who knows? But I stopped it and I looked because I was like, how much is left? It's got to be at least like an hour 15. And there was 40 minutes left. I was like, geez, I could probably knock this out. But the responsible thing, got a little rest. I think this thing moves incredibly briskly. For me, there's really, even the sequences that I don't think are quite as effective, I don't think they're still very engaging. And really, I think this thing zips by. I think for as heavy and dramatic as it is, it's a very fun watch. So I'm going to go to 7.5 for rewatchability.
I have thought about the fact as to rewatchability. How often do I need to stop or pause? Because I'm either bored or it's overwhelming or whatever. I managed to get through the first 2/3 of this movie. And I'm like, no, I could sit and watch another 40 minutes. I could probably have almost done. But no, I just don't want to. So I'm going to stop and come back.
What part did you stop? I'm just curious.
About the point in time where they're playing house. I just, at that point, I'm like, I've had enough. And so I stopped, and then I came back the next day and watched the remainder. So when I'm in that situation, it's not likely that I'm going to revisit this film. If somebody wants to watch it and, it's something they want to see, or I've recommended this may be something that they would find enjoyable, I'll sit and watch it again. But on my own, probably not. So that level is a 5 for me.
Question, because you guys didn't do it. Did you do an office poll this week?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not physically in the office and haven't been for a while, so it would be hard for me to tell you what happens.
Yeah, 90% of about the 26 or 7 people there knew who James Dean was. About 80% knew of the film Rebel Without a Cause. About 33% had actually seen it.
Pretty good.
That's actually that's very good for what I would normally think of our crowd there.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So that is a 5.17 average between the three of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 73% for Google users and an 88% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.05. So to repeat the categories, for Legacy, we had an 8.5. For Impact and Significance, we had an 8. For Novelty, we had an 8.17. For Classicness, we had an 8.83. For Rewatchability, we had a 5.17. And for audience score, we had an 8.05, giving us a final total of 46.72, and currently placing it on our list at number 129 between Chinatown and Iron Man.
I was going to say 122.
No, it's not quite Home Alone level.
God.
There are 4 films currently tied at 47.25 points. Name any of them outside of Home Alone.
Terminator.
Nope. All right, I'll give you the years because otherwise it's going to be too hard. I've got one from 2014 that was a Best Picture nominee. I have one from 1964 that's rather famous and iconic. And I have one from 1950 that has already been on the CLP list.
Ben-Hur, that's a little bit later. 50. Genre there?
The one from 1950?
Yeah.
You could say it's a legal drama, but it's an international film.
It's an illegal drama? Rashomon?
Rashomon.
Okay. I wouldn't really call that a legal drama, but okay.
It's very much a legal drama.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. They are arguing the case in front of the tribunal. Okay, yeah, that's.
So it's Grand Budapest Hotel, Dr. Strangelove, Home Alone, and Rashomon are all tied.
I mean, 3 of those make sense. The Home Alone is kind of a.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Home Alone. I'll watch it probably 15 times this holiday season because my kids love it. Yeah. So wait, it's tied with which 2?
Grand Budapest Hotel, Dr. Strangelove, Home Alone, and Rashomon.
No. What's this with?
Okay, so this place is currently at 129 in between Chinatown and Iron Man.
Iron Man 130 and 128 for Chinatown?
That's correct.
Okay.
Just to read the list from 120 down to 130 then. Just because I can. The Grand Budapest Hotel, Dr. Strangelove, Home Alone, Rashomon, The Odd Couple, John Wick, The Man Who Knew Too Much from 1956, Elf, Chinatown, this movie, Rebel Without a Cause, and Iron Man.
Cross your fingers. My daughter auditioned on Monday to be the lead in Elf. I think, I've got a very good feeling she's going to get it. So she's not going to be Buddy. She's going to be the female lead, Jovi, the Deschanel character.
Okay. So, any other reactions or commentary? Okay. So, as always, if you have any commentary for us, have any disagreements, think our scores were too low or too high, or you just have general criticism for our faces or likenesses, I don't know. You can email us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can message us at any of our socials at GMODepodcast on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, or TikTok at the handle at GMODepodcast. Or you can write us at the website RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMODepodcast. Remaining questions for this one. How did Frank Stark see the pictures of the car crash on the news the night that it happened? Now, I'm going to take you through this. This bothered me quite a bit. The chickie run, as it says, is at 8 o'clock. Assuming that he would have had to have seen it on the 10 or 11 o'clock news. Let's assume that the chickie run happens and it's before 8:30. None of the kids reported it to the police. So the police would have had to have found the car, taken the pictures, had the pictures developed in 1955, and then reported them to the news within a couple of hours?
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. At the end of the day, it's more thematic reasons. But for me, there's a car explosion. Somebody's going to see the smoke and all that. I was more, that's not 8 o'clock because it's the first day of school. It's going to be like 10 o'clock when it's light outside. Well, maybe not in 55. They're probably like going back at Labor Day, but it's going to be 10 o'clock when it's light. But yeah, I think it's a plot hole.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 2 here. Is Jim Stark actually a rebel? I would argue he's not.
No.
Well,
I think he rebels against what the other peers of his do in this movie, but I don't think he's necessarily rebellious in the sake of normally what we consider rebellious nature.
No.
Yeah, he is not a rebel in the sense that he's going to go be joining some kind of revolution by any means, but he is. I think the title is perfect for this movie because I think he fashions himself a rebel. He fashions himself being somebody who is lost and doesn't quite know where he fits in the world. So I think the title works really well. But I think you spend 5 minutes thinking about this movie, you're like, no, he's not a real rebel. He's lost. And he thinks that equates to being a rebel.
I don't think he's a rebel. I think he rebels against the norm. But is that a real rebel?
Well, he's rebelling by the end of the movie for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's his rebellion.
Yes, and also, This is 1954. This is 9 years past World War II, when society was in a huge moment of transition. And teenagers are now an actual social group. I think calling anything a rebel in 1950 that's not something countercultural is just silly, because this is when everyone's trying to figure out what it means to be a teenager, what this kind of new, in some sense, freedom offers these kids. But yeah, I mean, the rebels, the gang, those are the bad guys. He literally is just trying to say, he's trying to do the right thing, one, because his conscience is going to tell him, it's going to haunt him, he knows. So he wants to go talk to the cops to try to figure out like how to get through this. What rebel goes and wants to talk to the police? Like, I think that's so, yeah.
Yeah.
I have no more remaining questions. Remaining questions for either of you?
I have one. Okay. You got your sleeve caught on the door handle. Why the fuck don't you turn the car immediately and try to avoid going over the cliff?
Or brake?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a plot contrivance, but
yeah. Oh well, that's it.
All right. Well, with that, I want to thank our guest, Peterson, for being back with us for his 14th time. And you will not be back with us until March, when I forget what we're discussing.
it'd be Giant.
No, it's not
No.
Giant.
Okay.
It's something. I can't remember.
Something.
I know what it is. Inside Man.
I believe you're right. Yes.
Inside Man came out in March or April, so we probably have a March and April release.
You
March
are
or forward
correct.
April release.
It is Inside Man. So a Spike film for you.
This ain't no bank robbery.
I don't think they had seen that one.
It's fun, but it's also got a lot on its mind.
It is originally a Ron Howard film that he stepped out of directing and then gave over to Spike Lee.
Wow.
That is a good decision by Ron, because I think he would have made a perfectly adequate version. I mean, I guess it could have been up to the level of something like Ransom, which I would have been fine with because Ransom rules. But I don't know. Yeah.
It's definitely not as statement pointed as any of Spike's other movies. This is much more generally culturally.
No. It absolutely is. It 100% is statement related. Oh yeah, this thing is all about power. Oh yeah.
I guess
Okay.
I will be the judge.
We got a couple months to watch
All
and
right.
think, but yeah.
Well, regardless, go ahead and remind people what you're working on and where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find my back catalog at War Starts at Midnight. That's WSAM Pod. As well, you can find me in my back episodes here. You got 13 besides this one you can listen to. I guess the Oscars episode's not really, it's more of it's only on YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, only on YouTube there. But yeah, this season had some very, very fun ones. Last season too, so.
Any remaining thoughts for you for the week?
No, not really.
Okay.
I have a list of movies coming out that I'm very interested in seeing.
I think we all do.
What's top on it?
Well, I kind of want to see the Springsteen biopic. Just because I enjoy biopics and I like Springsteen, and I'm kind of curious about that one.
Curious too.
And that's why they keep making those.
I mean, I will say this is not a biopic in the sense it's a cradle to grave. It's a very small portion of his life. So I think that to me makes it a little bit more interesting.
Maybe. But even then, I still don't think they have the ability to land the plane very often. Like any of these musical biopics, as much as I enjoyed A Complete Unknown, it didn't land the plane for me.
I'm trying to think where that film ended. I really like that film, but I don't remember where it ended. It ended at Newport.
He goes electric. Right? That's the whole point.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it ends at him at Newport, and that's basically it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of ends with him being a dick, which you kind of already knew. But I still like the film.
For the majority of the film, it was fun watching him kind of progress and understanding a little bit more about this person. But where it ends, it just kind of like, I don't know. It left me with nothing. Like I felt nothing at the end of the movie.
He changed music, mic drop. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we talked briefly about One Battle After Another last week, but are you still percolating with it, Tom? Or are you still kind of on the fence?
I need to see it again. I think I know where I'm at, but I want to give it another go around because even Oppenheimer, as much as I enjoy that now, it took me 3 tries to really feel like that film unlocked for me.
Jeez. Okay.
And some of these, I don't know. There's just, I need a connection sometimes to get it, but I don't know. Like I did not hate the movie. I enjoyed good stretches of it. There are parts of it though that were inaccessible for me, particularly some of the revolutionary stuff and some of the deeper themes. Like I enjoyed the comedy of it. I enjoyed the surface level entertainment portion. The Sean Penn character is pretty easy to understand. Most of all, the Christmas whatever Nazi group thing. Yeah, the Christmas Adventurers and Tony Goldwyn and the semen demon stuff. Like that's all great entertainment. The car chase at the end of the film, grade A stuff. It's some of the other pieces of this that I think are a little bit more front and center that I have to revisit and understand and maybe go back to with a different set of eyes when I know what the plot of the movie already is, so that I watch it a little bit differently. And I think that for me is where it might unlock through a second viewing, but we'll see. It depends on what I have time for. Now, as for me and remaining thoughts for the week, I'll just quickly remind everybody I do have an upcoming appearance. I believe by the time this episode drops, it will have dropped already, but I was on an episode of 12 Angry Men discussing that on I've Seen That One, Clarissa Beckstead's new podcast. I also want to mention that our episode of the 1982 Almanac has been up for a couple of weeks already, but we're going to be about the time where all the social media voting is going to be going down here pretty quickly. So definitely look for all of that on your social media feeds. Continue to follow us with all of our CLP release drops and everything on social media. Again, that's going to be going on for the next couple of months yet, even though this is the last time Peterson will be on with us for the season. I'm sure he's going to be following along with all of the releases as they happen as well. And definitely some favorites still to come. But finally, the project that just seems to not ever finish, we're nearing an end to. I have gotten through the Brosnan Bond films. They are not nearly as bad as I remembered. I will let you know what the rankings will be when we get to that episode here. But I am almost through Casino Royale, which frankly I didn't need to rewatch, but it was a pleasure rewatching. That is,
it's a good movie.
It might easily be my favorite Bond film. I don't know if it's the one I've watched the most often, but I have so many fond memories of watching that in theaters.
Tom, don't you hate Goldeneye? Isn't that the one you like really despise?
No, I don't despise Goldeneye. There are ones where I've tried to give it a second chance.
Mm.
I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but rewatching Die Another Day basically cemented how ridiculous that movie is.
It's insane. The movie's insane.
To go from how bad Die Another Day is to how good Casino Royale is like one of the highest jumps I think ever in the franchise. Like every Bond's last movie seems to be their worst. Like theoretically, I don't know if, well, because Lazenby only had the one film, you can't really judge that one. And to a degree, I have a fond affection for Diamonds Are Forever, but it's probably the most campy of the Connery Bonds. But A View to a Kill is arguably Roger Moore's worst film. License to Kill is arguably Dalton's worst film. Die Another Day and No Time to Die are most definitely Brosnan and Craig's worst films.
You think No Time to Die is worse than Quantum of Solace?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I haven't seen.
I enjoy Quantum of Solace, even though I know it's like the script for that is not very good, and it's definitely one of those where that was made while it was during the writer's strike, and so it doesn't feel like a finished product, but it's more enjoyable to me than I if I did not have to watch it again for this series, I probably would never go back to No Time to Die.
I have not seen Quantum of Solace since theaters in 2008, so I should give it a rewatch.
It's got some good bones to it. It just, it's not a complete.
Well, I remember the action being very well staged and pretty exciting.
And I think people are a little bit harsh on Spectre as well.
I like Spectre.
I haven't seen it. That's one I haven't seen in theaters either. It's been 10 years. It was 2015, I think. So
I think I've only seen it 2 times after that, but I don't think it's that bad.
I think
it's not as good as Skyfall by good stretches, but it's not that bad.
I wonder if the word and feeling for Spectre is nowhere near as harsh if it's not directed by Mendes. I think coming off the high of Skyfall and being like this, I'm not saying it is, but there's an argument to be made that it's the best Bond film, Skyfall, and then going to Spectre, it's just kind of like okay.
Yeah, I think there's something definitely baked into that, but it's one of the movies, again with Skyfall as well, that I really need to give another set of eyes to in the overall plot of doing this project. I want to see them again to kind of stack them against each other as opposed to just judging them on their own merit. But we're getting close. I don't know where Dad's at with his completion here. I think he still has Die Another Day to go.
Yes, and then the Craig films again. So,
but that makes 6 for him, and I believe that makes 4 left for me. So we're getting close. It may happen before the end of the year. Who knows?
Yeah, I know.
But anyway, that looks like a good spot for us this week. Thank you for listening. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. Next week, for our 284th episode, we welcome back Jailan Salman to discuss All About Eve from 1950, celebrating its 75th anniversary. Written and directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, cinematography by Milton Krasner, music by Alfred Newman, starring Betty Davis, Ann Baxter, George Sanders, Celeste Holm, Hugh Marlowe, Thelma Ritter, and Marilyn Monroe. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, or TikTok at the handle @GMODpodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ryan Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.